A lot of NCOs are saying that Gen Z soldiers are soft. But are they actually soft or just adapting to broken systems? Let's talk about it.
Roger, sir!
Welcome back to the Roger Sergeant podcast, where we talk all things Army with no fluff. And I'm your host, Sergeant Cruz. And if you're tired of the sugarcoating, hit the subscribe button. So today, what I want to talk about is a trending topic, and I'm going to break this down into like 3 parts. And I also give you some examples to make sure I kind of drive the point home. And at the same time, let's see if you actually agree with them. Let's start off with the first subject, which is what older NCOs are seeing. And when I say that, I mean we're talking about discipline and questioning things. So think about a time that a soldier challenged or asked why, right? An example of this, I would say, is something simple as an NCO tells the squad to go police call the motor pool. Instead of immediately executing the order, a younger soldier might just respond with, "Isn't that a contractor's job? Or didn't we just do that yesterday?" So we could also be looking at this in multiple perspectives. The older NCO, what they see is kind of like defiance, or they may actually see a lack of discipline. At the other side, or the flip side of the coin, the younger soldier that are more kind of like used to like systems where questioning authority is kind of like encouraged, and only because it can save time and effort. So back in the day, it was, this is what your task is, get up and go. And troops would do it. Now, troops want to know, what's the deal? Like, what's in it for me type deal. Or why are we doing this? Is there a better way? That's what it is. Is there a better way? And I think a possible takeaway from this could be this generation that we're in right now, that we're coming up with. They're kind of generally wired to ask why before acting, before taking action. And this could be seen as a sign of critical thinking, and to others, it could be seen as a sign of disrespect. So there's that. Next thing I want to talk about is sometimes it's like the resistance to standards and customs and courtesy. And example that I have down for this would be something like, so let's say during a formation, a junior soldier doesn't stand at parade rest when speaking to a senior NCO. And when they're corrected, what they say is potentially, "I wasn't being disrespectful. We don't really do that unless it's a big deal." And what is a big deal, really? A lot of times we allow troops to talk to us freely, right? Because if every troop was locked up every day, all day, it would be awkward. So I think a lot of times us as juniors, right? Because I also have a senior, I may not lock it up at the right time. Say a bunch of sergeant majors talking and I'm being asked a question, and because I talk to my brigade sergeant major a certain way, maybe it'd be a good idea for me to get at parade rest because he's in front of his peers. So things like that. But a possible takeaway of this could be that there's kind of like getting to be like some type of erosion in the customs and courtesies, right? And can be viewed as a deeper red flag on deeper issues on order and respect. At the same time, another perspective could be that older NCOs see this kind of like as a breakdown in military discipline and tradition. So what they're used to is snap, get this done, or be at parade rest, Or if you're going to walk past an officer, salute. If you're going to walk past an NCO, you give them the greeting of the day. And I'll be honest with you, I've walked past countless junior troops and junior NCOs, and they'll find a way to look away. They're looking for quarters on the ground. I don't know what it is that they're looking for, but they're definitely not looking to give me the greeting of the day. And they'll go out of their way to just not make eye contact. And while to me, sometimes I'll kind of think and be like, why are they doing this? But most of the time, I'm kind of in my own world, and I have to get from point A to point B, so I'm not paying it no mind. Or it doesn't bother me. I do pay it mind because I notice it, but it doesn't bother me per se. And this is, I guess, one of the ways that the NCOs that the NCOs have this gripe or this saying that the junior soldiers are softer because they're not doing things that they did when they grew up, when they were coming up. So let's move into the second subject. It's why Gen Z might be asking smarter questions, right? Because we must know, right? They're tech savvy. And most importantly, they are aware and accepting of mental health issues. So let's say, for instance, questioning inefficient training methods, because we all know that we have our own way of training, and we've done a training hundreds of times. And I want you to think about this. How many times have you been part of some sort of training, and that NCO that's leading the training doesn't have nothing in their hands? No references, no book, no doctrine, no nothing, not even their phone to say, hey, this is where I'm getting it from. So they're shooting off the top of the dome. And one thing I learned when I was in BLC as an instructor was that we need to have doctrine in our hand for reference. We always had our little iPad or whatever it was that we used at the time, always for reference, because no one is bigger than the program. And if I forget to give you valuable information, then the training is not to standard. Okay. So let's say during a classroom PowerPoint brief, a Gen Z soldier, they raise their hand and they have a question or they have a statement. They say, this is the same slide that we saw in basic training. Isn't there a hands-on or digital module for us to do this now? Because if I've seen the same training over and over, which is why annual training gets pushed off to the side, because of the fact that it's monotonous, it doesn't evolve. So therefore, you're seeing the same slide decks year in and year out, and that gets old. I can't remember. Was it accident training? Accident training? Let me know in the comments which one it is, but it's Staff's, I think it's Staff Sergeant or Sergeant First Class Jones, I think it was, that he's the guy, and he's been the same, it's been the same slide, I think it's accident avoidance. He's been the same slide deck for at least 15 years. Same slide deck. I don't know if it's changed because I haven't had to do that training in a while, but that's an example. So back to the perspective. So a possible perspective on this could be that the older NCO may see this as either impatient or they have lack of discipline because they're asking a question initially, maybe not seeing the whole slide deck or not getting to the hands-on portion. And the lack of discipline is because they just call them out in front of everybody, right? And nobody likes to be called out. But the soldier is used to these like interactive mobile-based learning apps and platforms. As you see, you can find Joe on any app. mainly on TikTok, but you can find them looking for information everywhere. So they're tired of seeing the same thing. If you notice, when these reels and clips and TikTok fads, they're all chopped up. They're not long form. That's why a lot of creators have issues when it comes over to YouTube, because it's long form content. Shorts do great, but they don't earn almost anything. It's the long form content. But my point is, they are using it. We've come to a point that information has to be chopped up and has to be delivered to the point. So a possible takeaway for this could be that they're not being lazy. They're just questioning outdated methods that are based on how they learn best. Because that's another issue, or another point that we can improve as senior leaders. We have to find a way that we reach the younger audience. Just like, think about it. I've been in for 17, going on 18 years. When I came in, I wanted the teaching methods that I learned the best. And they was always asking questions. What's your learning method? Hands-on, theory, sitting down, whatever it is. And we always wanted it a certain way. And we now are the ones delivering the message and receiving the request. And we also are now that NCO that'll stand and read a PowerPoint word for word and just turn around and say, do you have any questions? So don't be that one. So the next situation could be, we're talking about prioritizing mental health over the mission. An example of this is soldiers request to be excused, let's say from a field exercise due to they have stress or they haven't slept in a while. They cite, because Joe knows a lot of regulations, but they cite the self-care and burnout referencing behavioral health briefings, right? And let's say the NCO replies with the good old suck it up. We all have to do the same thing. You'll be fine. So with this, a possible perspective is, to older NCOs, this appears to be as a softness. You can't cut it. You're letting the team down because of you. You're being selfish, and selfish is equated to being soft. So that's probably their mentality. Now, the young soldier, on the other hand, it's about using the tools the Army taught them to use, like speaking up to avoid burnout. Now, the issue with when it comes to speaking up and burnout and using the avenues of approach that the Army allows us or tells us to use is there's a time and place. And correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say 9 times out of 10, many times, more than not, Joes, and we're talking troops. Let's say troops, because NCOs do this too. Officers do it too. So let's say troops. Troops always find a way to not go to NTC, JMRC, JMTC, whichever one that is. We'll always find a reason why we can't go there. We'll find the reason why we can't go to the field for a week. So on one hand, the leaders have heard it all. On the other hand, this individual that's coming with this with this concern, it could be potentially true. So as a leader, you have to learn how to sift through all this. Maybe a compromise could be hey, you can have the first 2 days that you leave early so you can go to some appointments and stuff like that, but come out and for the next 14 days or something. There's a way to compromise and still get the mission done. So one thing about Joe is that there's 100 of them. All right. So a possible takeaway that I will put out for you guys is the soldier, they can file a complaint and they can cite either counterproductive or toxic leadership, because that can be their perception. And we have to protect ourselves as leaders in order to get the mission done. not get a complaint because it's always a possibility, and still take care of Joe. So it's threefold. But do me a favor, if you're enjoying the content so far, go ahead and comment, subscribe, or download and leave a review. All right, now that that's done. Part 3, where the Army is failing to meet the soldier halfway, right? Like old school training models has kind of like been a big deal. So that's kind of like a perpetual thing that I hear. The Army, and when I say the Army, I mean the leaders, because the Army is an entity, and as leaders, we work under that entity. So leaders fail to meet the troop halfway. First part of that would be, let's say, the PT that doesn't match to real world readiness. Because believe it or not, troop be like, yo, this PT is boring. And it's not doing anything for me. This push up, sit up, and 2-mile run, it's just not it. When the morning PT consists of the traditional run, push-ups, and sit-up circuits, it just isn't it. So let's say that were the case. And then the junior soldier is going to ask, why are we not training with rucks, sandbags, sleds, or doing hit circuits like they do in the AFT? Now that we're on the AFT programs, right? Why are we not doing that? And then we have the NCO that's going to respond is, this is how we've always been doing it. This is how it's always been done, right? How many of you guys have heard that? This is how we've done it. This is how it's always been done. That it's just the way it is. And a lot of possible perspective to that is like the ACFT and now AFT, it demands functional strength, power, and agility. Hands down. None of which are targeted when we're just doing the old PT train up, push up, sit up, 2-mile run. So let's see what a key takeaway could that be, right? Because the Army itself preaches modernization. That's what they do. Same time, we are clinging to outdated daily training norms. We fail to evolve within our own standard, which is the Army standard. And if we train, and if we don't train to standard, we're going to miss the mark. That's the bottom line. If you are moving towards AFT as an NCO, you got to come up with a new way to engage each muscle that's going to be challenged during the AFT. It is what it is. Another common issue is the lack of digital integrity in daily operations. So let's say, for instance, a Gen Z team leader suggests using like a shared cloud tool, like let's say, for instance, Microsoft Teams or OneNote, and they want to do this in order to like track counseling dates, maintenance, and training schedules, which could be considered a good idea. But let's say the senior leader, they just say just use a whiteboard or a paper tracker that's in the office, because everyone has paper. There's a whiteboard everywhere. I'm pretty sure in your offices, you've seen a lot of whiteboards, and there's a whole bunch of stuff written down, the vehicle status, appointments, what individual is going to be at what training at what time, things of that nature. So a lot of times, like, this can frustrate the younger soldiers who are literally fluid in producing these things. A lot of times when these soldiers are going to school, or if they already have like an associate's or some type of degree, they've already been taught how to use Excel. They've already been taught how to use Word. So they're very fluent in these digital productive tools and expect real-time updates, and I would say even like stuff on the mobile apps on their phones, because it's a lot easier. I forgot what it was. It was like something with calendar, and I didn't force. I asked my guys when I was a platoon sergeant, I said, hey, can you guys download this calendar app? So therefore we know if we're going to come up with appointments, you see, my job was to put the month training calendar, what we're doing, the trainings, If we're out in the field, so Joe knows what day not to pick to do an appointment. So everyone can see it. Team leaders can see it, squad leaders can see it, and I can see it, platoon leader can see it. That's an example. And they ate it up. Because you can't force them to get that, but they got it because it gives them some type of predictability. And potential, I guess a good takeaway from that is like the Army itself is, we know it's been slow to adapt to like digital tools. We know that. And these tools, Gen Z is already probably using them. Right now, PowerPoint is something that a lot of senior NCOs are not proficient at. And these officers and junior NCOs and junior soldiers, they already know how to use it. So just because I can't use it doesn't mean that we shouldn't use it. So they're already proficient at it. They already use it. So to them not use it is going to lead to inefficiencies at the end of the day, and it'll lead to missed opportunities of a smarter workflow. And that's the difference. I think it's Gen Z want the smart way through, or at least the one that they consider smart, and most of it is going to be digital. So another potential issue that I've seen, ignoring feedback loops like in leadership. An example is after like field exercises, a young troop asks during the AAR, can we submit feedback anonymously? Some of us don't feel comfortable speaking up in front of leadership, and that's a valid concern. And let's say that facilitator says something along the lines of, if you got something to say it now, right? Because everyone wants to say, hey, when you do an AAR, you have to have thick skin. It never happens. It never happens. And a lot of times when you say something, they're not supposed to defend it. They're supposed to write it down. And what they'll do is they'll start defending it. So what does that do to the rest of the group? I'm not going to say anything because they got all the answers. So the Army says it wants innovation. That's what they say. But I think a lot of times I guess we can say we fail to create spaces where younger voices, younger troops feel safe in the contribution. Because if you really strip it down to it, if I give a class and you tell me my class is trash, I'm going to feel some type of way. That's the bottom line. So takeaway from this is, as I said, it shuts down positive feedback. And it just not good. It doesn't include everyone. It's not inclusive. And I get it. Hey, this all-inclusive generation. If you're a team, you have to include people. You have to, because if it's 5 people and only 4 are participating, there's one that could have a banging idea and it doesn't get shown or explored because of the fact that they're not included. Bottom line is, whether you think they're soft or smart, one thing's for sure, the Army needs to evolve. And we're doing it little by little, but it has to evolve. Drop a comment if you agree or disagree. Subscribe for more Real Army talk. And remember, you don't have to embrace the suck if you got the right tools in your ruck. I'm Sergeant Cruz, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Roger, Sergeant.